Dis so lekker om saam met julle te kuier vanoggend hier op die program Vreugde Joy. My naam is Bertha le Roux-Wahl en ja, dankie dat jy hier is. Dankie dat jy saam met my kuier. Ons kuier vanoggend met Judy Plaatjies van Coram Deo. Hoe gaan dit vanoggend met jou, Judy?
Môre Bertha en môre luisteraars. Dit gaan baie goed, dankie. Kan nie kla nie. En met u?
Nee, baie goed, dankie. Ek weet ons gaan 'n bietjie meer in Engels gesels vanoggend as Afrikaans, maar dis lekker om jou in Afrikaans te kon begroet. Yeah, so Judy, we want to talk a little bit more about narrative therapy. And yes, exactly what that means. So I want to ask you, when we say your story matters, you matter, which is the slogan of your practice, what does that mean? Why do we need to say that?
Bertha and listeners, as you know, our lives are made up of stories. And stories have both a negative and a positive impact on our lives. And many people that I see that come to narrative therapy, they come there with a story. We all have stories. Even if you go on a coffee date with a friend, we exchange stories. So the person that walks into my practice will come with a story. And normally it's what we call a dominant or a problem-saturated story. So the person comes with the story, I listen. And the whole idea of narrative therapy is to deconstruct this problem-saturated story. And as we're deconstructing, which means to take apart, we find other stories emerging. So narrative therapy has the aim to change any negative meanings that have been attached to any story of trauma or feelings of shame, guilt, and then to deconstruct it and then to reauthor it into a new story that will give new meaning to the person. And then in narrative therapy, and that's what I love about narrative therapy, is that the problem is seen as separate from the person. And the problem is the problem, and not the person is the problem. So, for example, we internalize what people say to us, whether it's negative or positive. And, for example, internalize, I have anxiety. So someone may come to my practice and say, I have anxiety. That's internalization. The beauty of narrative therapy, it says, no, that's not your identity. Let's externalize it. And through deconstructing the story, we come to the externalization of anxiety is part of my story. And how do I make meaning of it? And how do I go forth with this? That, yes, anxiety is sitting there. It's not inside me, but I need to make new meaning with it, and I need to move forward with anxiety.
Yes, and I think it's when you start to qualify it, when you say, so, hi, I'm Bertha le Roux-Wahl, I'm an actress, I am a radio presenter, and I have a challenge with anxiety, for instance. So I have a challenge with something. So it's something that's not part of you as a person. It's not something that you, well, you know, when you are introducing someone, you're not going to say, listen, so this is Piet Pompies, and he is depressive. He is this. No, he is not this. He has a challenge with depression. So that, I think that is wonderful. That's why I also really like it, because now you are saying to the client that you don't have to change your personality. You don't have to change your belief system. We just have to change the way that you are relating to this problem, the way that you are relating, or the way that that it's challenging you, and then also the way that you are solving it on a daily basis. Am I so? And I think what we do believe is that you can take a challenge that's one that will confront you almost every day, but that you can then change the way, like you said, the positive, the narrative of the story that's good and strong. You can take that and see, I have done this, so I am able to do this. I'm able to work through this challenge.
Like, for instance, Bertha, if someone comes in and they say, "Hi, I'm Peter. I have depression." My response would be, "Hi, Peter, I'm Judy. Um, Tell me more about yourself. I don't want to hear about depression because that is not who you are. That
Yes.
is, like you use the word challenge, that may be a challenge that you have, but that doesn't define who you are. Depression doesn't define who you are. But we don't discard the problem and say, no, you don't have depression.
Yeah.
No, we acknowledge that depression is there, but it is not, it does not, that's not your identity. That's not who you are. So that's how we remove the problem from the person. And I always see it when I sit with a client, I always see it as the problem is sitting next to you. It's external, it's not inside of you. And let's have a conversation with that challenge or problem. And we do
Yes.
it through
And
stories.
so that's what I wanted to ask now is how do we help the client to get to that point where they can realize I am not the problem. The problem is the problem. So, and one of those things is like always from the therapist's point of view, speaking about the problem as if like it is, that it's not that it's next to you, that you can almost describe that problem, what it looks like, and so on. So, I think what is more ways of helping your client to define that divide between them and the problem?
I must admit, it takes a long time, or they find it difficult to, because that is how they've lived most of their lives, that this is internalized. So it's not like in the first session that they will click, oh no, the problem is there. It takes a while for them to understand. So one of the things that we can use in narrative is to also like personify it. Would you like to give it another name? What does when you
So, like for
question depression?
depression, some people would refer to it as the black hole or the black
That's it.
dog
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, exactly. So give it a name, and then we speak of it in that with that name. So we would then say, so what is the black hole? How is it affecting you? Bless you. How is it affecting you? Uh, when last did you experience the black hole? So it will be the narrative questions that we will ask. So we're personifying depression with another name or another. We can also use metaphors. Uh, can I give you quickly an example of a beautiful metaphor I had with one of my clients? Um, the person shared with me that they feel they're in this dark forest, blindfolded. And we had such a beautiful discussion of what smells are you smelling? Because although he's blindfolded, the other senses must be working. So, what are you smelling? Why are you there? How did you get there? And through the discussions, a lot of things came to the fore. But that was such a beautiful metaphor that we could use as a way of, and it wasn't depression, it was more that he was feeling disappointed in himself. So it was better for him to hide out in this dark forest. So that's the beauty of narrative therapy, is the metaphors we work with. And sometimes unbeknowing, the clients actually put the metaphors on the table because they will explain, this is how I feel. I feel like I'm in a dark forest and I'm blindfolded. And just by asking, what are you experiencing? How did you get there? How do you want to get out? And that's how we I really, Bertha, listeners, I love narrative therapy.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can see the excitement. But I want to ask now is, so narrative therapy is then only for people who are creative.
I can honestly tell you and the listeners, I am not creative. No, no. I'm, you know what, when I done the course, actually, I thought this is not for me because I don't see myself as a creative person. But it could be through doing the course that something came to the fore. But I don't believe you have to be creative. You will be equipped with the skills and especially your listening ears, and you will pick up these metaphors and you will
Mm.
go with it. Yeah.
And then from the client side, I can just hear some old women saying, "Oh no, that's no nonsense. I'm going to sit there and think I'm a forest, or I'm looking like a black dog, or whatever like that. What is the? Why am I going to do that?" So um, it doesn't have to be, because that's what's wonderful also about
Yeah.
narrative therapy, is that you don't have to follow the route of the metaphor. There's so
Yes.
many ways that the narrative therapist is equipped to aid you with your
Mm-hmm.
unique feelings towards well, in this case now, metaphors, blah 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 blah. So so um as a client, you don't have to be creative either. Um, it is lovely. It's a very it's a good way of dividing you, or separating you from the problem. Is
Mm-hmm.
being creative in that way. But you can be straightforward as well. You don't have to give it another name. You can give it just the depression,
Mm-hmm.
or the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, or um, the whatever, the alcoholism, or the so and so.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I think, and then also the therapist will help you through
Mm-hmm.
this whole process of that is why you are there. That is why you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
somebody. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how easy is it for a client to relate their story um, in a setting like this? And do I have to go like way back to when I was born, or what? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these are questions like, oh, what, you want to hear
Mm-hmm.
my life story? What do you mean my life story?
Mm-hmm.
What part of it do you want to hear? So how important
Mm-hmm.
is it to tell that story, and from where, which aspect?
Normally, what happens is if I see a client for the first time, uh, I would ask them why are they there? Because they may come with, like I said earlier on, they'll come with one story or their problem story. And when they start telling the story, and I listen and I ask certain questions to elicit more responses. And then, so it's not a case of what happened when you were 4 years old. They
Mm,
tend to come out with it themselves, just via the questions I would pose to them. But normally, a first time client, I would ask, why are you here today? And what are your expectations? What are you hoping to get out of the session? And in many a times with the young kids, they will say their parents are sending them. Then I would say, okay,
oh,
that's your
like, why are
parents'
you here?
voice.
Because I was told to be here. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then I'll say, okay, that's mommy and daddy's voice. You need to be here. What is your voice saying? Do you want to be here? And I actually had one young lady that said, "Wil jy hier wees?" And I said, that's fine. We can just sit and have a chat then. And we chatted about school and
Mm,
how is she finding school and how's her friends. And through chatting about the friends, a story came out that she could share with me. And from there, and then when she left, her mother said to her, kom jy terug na Tannie Judy toe? Toe sê sy, natuurlijk sal ek terugkom. So, yes, they do come there and it's not their voice or it's not that they want to be there, but
mm.
I really do believe, Bertha, and this is part of my theology background. If you intentionally create a safe space, and your client walk in there and they feel that safe, sacred space, because I believe it's a sacred space. Um, and if they can feel it or sense it, they will have the freedom to share what they feel comfortable in sharing with me.
What, I mean, when you're sharing your story, how important is it to let your own voice be heard?
Very important. It is so important. You know, we grow up and we have so many other voices. The voices could be your parents, it could be teachers, it could be friends, and some voices are positive and some voices are negative. And we tend to internalize those voices. And some voices are voices of shame, guilt, I'm not worthy. And when I was actually preparing to have this discussion with you, I was a bit too minded, but I'm going to do it. So when I was in high school, one of the voices that I experienced by a teacher, where he actually told me I'm stupid. He actually said to me, "You were dunce." And I mean, it was high school, and you were a teenager, and you're already struggling with your identity, and in front of a class because I answered wrong. That was his response.
Sure.
And right through, my marks just dropped because I internalized that voice that I am stupid. And it was only through therapy that I realized, but that is someone else's voice. That is not my voice. And I need to have my voice heard. And I believe that's what narrative therapy does. It allows people to find their voices because through life, they've internalized other people's voices. And in the meantime, they've lost their voice. So that is why with narrative, we don't give advice. We don't do it this way. It's a matter of you have a voice, use it, empower yourself with your voice.
You already have the ability. And I think that's what a wonderful part for me about that is that in our own stories, when we look back, and we do tend to lean towards the negative narrative of the problematic storyline. You know, but I think what helps with narrative therapy is when we can explore around that negative event that happened. What was the things that
Mm.
kind of just lifted you up and out of that event? And then when the client then can come to a realization that, oh my goodness, I can use that. So in the end, it's like you said, it's not the therapist sitting there and going, okay, so next week I want you to have made a list of this and this and this and this, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that and so on. No, it is more that the client can get to their own solution of this problem or dissolvement of this problem or the way I'm going to from now forth work with this problem or allow this problem to be in my life. That comes from them so that they can see from them their part how this is going to go forward. And I think that's what's so amazing about it. Yes.
Do you know how many clients will ask me, so what do you think? What should I do? And then I actually smile at them and I say, no, what do you think you should do? And they're like, but is that not why I'm here? You're supposed to tell me. Then I'm like, no, you have a voice. Use it.
Yes.
You know exactly what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. I'm here on a journey with you. And then she'll sit or he will sit. And then it's like we call it in narrative therapy, a sparkling moment. They do come up with the answer and they shock themselves. So, yeah.
I think it's wonderful. And I also think is when you start moving away from saying, but I am doing this because this happened in my life. But now you are saying, but listen, you are still in charge. You still can make the choice. So why you are saying you're doing this because this happened in your life. I understand that this happened in your life and I acknowledge this. But do you have to keep on making this choice that is detrimental to your sanity or to your life at the moment? So that, and I think that is also a way of just maybe looking at their life in a different way than they have before. And also the power, like you said, the empowerment that they do feel and experience, that we can feel and experience as well, is when your voice means something. And that brings us back to the whole thing of, but is my story worth it? And what do you say to someone if they come and they say, but my story doesn't matter? I'm not worthy of my story being told. Who cares about my story?
And I do get that. They'll come and they'll say, but this is not a big issue, or it's not a big story, or why are you taking the time to even listen to it? But once you start telling the story and you have someone that is listening with compassion in a non-judgmental way, they start to realize and they start to see the value of their story. And as they continue telling their story, they start realizing their own value, because their story may have been suppressed for many years and they've internalized it so deeply. But as they start telling it and they realize there is value in me sharing the story, because as I'm sharing it, the burden is already being lifted off their shoulders. So, yes, it's a process.
An absolute process. And I think also during the post, and this is where the pastoral part comes in, is that we can really, through the stories that Jesus showed us and told us, we can show them you are worthy of anybody. I mean, Zacchaeus was sitting in the tree and he was one of the most hated people around. So he could sit with that story that nobody wants me, nobody cares about me. But Jesus showed him the way. And I think the big thing is also that you said just now was non-judgmental. And we do we know what sin is. I know what sin is. You know what sin is. But we can't help someone to walk towards God if we are going to throw them with stones of sin. So that's the thing is if you have to walk in a non-judgmental way with everyone you meet and walk, and then it's a difficult thing to do. Because each of us have like just a little bit of a twist on the reality, a twist on what our belief system is. And if you don't fit into that cookie cutter way, then I'm going to judge you. But now we're saying non-judgmental. So what we can say now, definitely, if you have a challenge at the moment with a problem, please contact someone. Please have a conversation with someone, and especially somebody who's non-judgmental, somebody like a narrative therapist. Please do that. But what I could also say is if you are somebody listening, sitting here and listening and saying, but, I know someone who's got a challenge. I know someone who's stuck at the moment with a challenge in their life. What can I do? And my answer to you would be, listen non-judgmentally and say to them, listen, maybe listen to today's show, take the podcast of today's show and say, maybe you want to listen to this because you know what? You are worth it. And I think that's very important to bring through. So it is intentional to create a safe space for a client or a person to listen. And you can only do that by what you are living and what you are giving them. Judy, this is now such a wonderful chat we have had today, but I want to ask you if there's one thing that you can leave the listeners with today, that they can take home today, there where they are sitting or driving, listening today.
Bertha and the listeners, because expressing your voice is so important for me. I really want to encourage the listeners. Use your voice and tell your story. And like you have said now, don't just tell it to anyone. Tell it to someone that you know you can trust and will not judge you. And by telling your story and using your voice, you will be able to take agency, and also you'll be able to create new meaning for your life going forward. And just to end off, I really want to encourage you, if you're walking a journey with shame, guilt, unworthiness, any form of trauma, I want to leave you with a psalm. And it's one of my favorite verses because it meant such a lot to me on my journey. It's Psalm 139, verse 14. And it says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." But I added on another piece. You are fearfully and wonderfully made by our Creator, God. Thanks.
And as I would say to my kids, you know who made you? God made you. Yes, Mommy, I know God made me when they were little, of course. Now they don't speak to me. But, they're teenagers. But it's like, you know who made you? Yes, Mommy, God made me. Does God make rubbish? No, Mommy. Exactly. And that's where you start off. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think also that we can bring from today's talk is that I love the way that you say, take agency for your life. Take back responsibility for your life from the problem. And then the other thing is trust your voice. I think trust that your voice matters, and trust your voice in what it is saying to you. Absolutely.
Yes.
So if you want to find out a little bit more about pastoral narrative therapy, you can visit the website of Coram Deo, which is CORAM for mommy, MDEO, coramdeo.co.za. And you can find a person there who will compassionately listen to you and who's interested to hear your story, and to navigate the ways away from the problem, or through the problem, or just in a better relationship with the problem.
Yes.
Thank you so much for visiting with me today, Judy. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Bertha. Thank you, listeners. I enjoyed this morning's session. It was cool.
It was.
Thank you.
My kant af, baie dankie dat jy saam met my gekuier het vanoggend. Ons maak volgende week weer so. Shalom.